Hello. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. We're going to wait just a couple more moments to allow everybody to join the session, and then we'll begin. We've added the video feature today to allow for a really good exchange during this presentation, which is a little bit different format than what we've had in the past. So. Good afternoon. Welcome to our 8th Lunch and Learn presented by the Charlottesville Police Foundation and the Charlottesville Police Department. My name is Gail Milligan. I'm the Executive Director of the Foundation. Now is such an important time for us as members of the community to understand more about policing and the law. And that makes us excited to be presenting this series and very happy that you're joining us today. We so greatly appreciate the partnership with CPD and the time and effort all of the presenters have invested in bringing this information to us. We also appreciate the support from the Batten School of Leadership and Public Policy and from our host and friend, Diane. The Lunch and Learn series is one of the outcomes of our engagement in the community and is part of our core mission to inform and connect. In each session, members of CPD will offer unique insight to the work of the department and answer questions you have about that work. Before we begin, I want to share a brief overview of our work at CPF. Simply stated, the Charlottesville Police Foundation serves the community by serving the police. We seek to improve the quality of life in Charlottesville by offering a community partner for our police department. The foundation promotes excellence in police services by investing in programs that enhance the department and yet are beyond the reasonable reach of the ability of the city's budget. We reward excellence. We strengthen the connections between the department and the public through outreach programs and community events. Some of the ways we serve include housing grants to officers so they can live locally, an awards dinner and Officer of the Month program, advanced training, grants for specific needs such as K-9, technology, and new community programs like this Lunch and Learn series, outreach events like Cops for Kids Day and Charlottesville Night Out, which celebrates police and community. To clarify our role, while we collaborate with the Charlottesville Police Department, we are an independent 501c3 nonprofit. The extent of our advocacy role for the CPD is to improve the quality of policing as a community service. Now I'd like to introduce our presenter. Thomas Van Emert is the CIT coordinator for the Thomas Jefferson Area Crisis Intervention Team. For the last 14 years, that program has been the largest CIT program in Virginia. Tom and his team have trained over 2,500 first responders in CIT. He trained and mentored the development of many new CIT programs throughout Virginia and the United States. He's the current vice president of the Virginia CIT Coalition and past president of CIT International. We are extremely fortunate to have someone with such depth of knowledge and passion for his field in our town. A quick note, you can add your questions to the Q&A section on the bottom of your screen, and Tom is going to be handling questions and audience interaction from here. Thank you so much. Tom, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Gail, and I'm honored to be here. And thank you to the Charlottesville Police Foundation for the invitation and for everybody that's here today. During this time that I have, I want to give a brief overview about mental health and law enforcement. I'm going to show a video. It's an hour long, but I'm only going to show the first 10 minutes of it. But I think it gives a great insight about the issues of mental health, the community, about law enforcement, about race, and it's an incredibly honest segue about the concerns that are happening today. This video was put together in San Antonio, Texas, but the information is universal and it applies exactly what's happening here in Virginia and also in our own backyard of Charlottesville and the Elmore greater community. After that, I'm going to show a PowerPoint, and I'm going to be very brief about it, probably last about 15 minutes. And then I want to do an exercise with you and get some thoughts and feedback from you about the view of mental health and mental illness and how we view mental illness. And then last part is I'm going to show a quick video again, and this one was only going to last about 4 minutes. And this is put together by a national organization called Crisis Now, and about how to look at how we can improve our mental health crisis response system. Again, Tom Von Hammer, I cover and work for the Thomas Jefferson Area CIT program. I work for 9 communities, 9 counties. So that's the city of Charlottesville, Elmore County, UVA, all the surrounding rural counties, Nelson, Fluvanna, Louisa, Greene, and I work for Goochland and Powhatan too. I'm the oldest, longest surviving CIT coordinator in Virginia at this time, and been coordinator since the development and implementation of it since 2006 with that. I am employed by the City of Charlottesville Police Department, and I'm housed at the Region 10 Community Services Board. And my job is to try to bring together the communications, the collaborations of working with law enforcement, mental health, and the community, all working together. My belief and philosophy is that we're all working with the same people, but just from different perspectives. And that is, to me, is the real strength of CIT. So without further ado, I'm going to start this video for the first 10 minutes, and we'll go from there.
3262. For good information, she may be around the location. Is there any chance we get you up here? 371. Okay, this is for the husband. Hey, how you doing? Hey, Officer Stevens, Ernie. Hey, Lewis, my partner Gabe. How long has she been acting this way?
It's been since Saturday. She just believes that I'm having an affair and that I have a woman that I've gotten pregnant and I'm receiving, hiding.
I'm sorry you're having a bad day. That past 4 days have been bad? Okay, well, we're here because we don't want you to have any more bad days, all right? We want to get you some help. In the police academy, we had no training on what it was like to deal with somebody that was mentally ill or in a crisis. I was probably the last officer that you wanted to help a loved one that was in a mental health crisis.
She's watching us sleep. And I told him I could be in the living room. I can hear that whole conversation.
So you actually hear this
I
girl
hear both of
talking.
them.
Okay. But now in the mental health unit, every single call we're responding to is a mental health crisis. I'm not sure. Do you hear her right now as we're talking? He's talking to her because he's actually out by the. You want me to go to your room? Are you hearing? You're hearing it right now? God, I don't hear it. I don't hear anything. I'm sorry, I don't. I'm just being honest with you. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm not saying that I don't believe that you don't hear him. I believe that this is very real for you. I just don't hear anything right now. I promise you. I know you don't. You're right. You didn't do anything wrong.
I'm getting kicked out of my own house.
No.
Somebody don't come out.
You're extremely agitated right now and stressed out.
I'm broken. I'm shattered. My whole inside.
Okay, you're using words like shattered and broken. Okay, if you were my sister, okay, there's no way I would leave you in this condition. There's no way.
1001 to make boys emergency.
Is my son needs to be taken to foster his bipolar schizophrenia. Make sure they train police officers.
Okay.
Bipolar schizophrenia.
What's going on? Drop that for me. Drop that for me, guy.
Jay!
Drop it. Drop it.
Jay! Why he shot him?
More conservative estimates say that those suffering from a mental illness account for almost 1/4 of all fatalities involving law enforcement. This slide identifies every single officer-involved shooting. All of those that are identified in red showed some sign of mental illness. Is there a crisis in the United States when it comes to mental health issues? Absolutely.
People with mental illness are overrepresented in every aspect of the criminal justice system. So I work in a specialized unit that only deals with people in a mental health crisis. Almost everything about how I respond to calls goes against what most would believe. I'm in plain clothes. I drive an unmarked car. My weapon is concealed. And for the last 9 years, the only weapon that I've used is my ability to communicate.
Are you some kind of like therapist or something? No, I'm a police officer, just like him. I don't want to say we do unconventional policing. We just approach certain situations differently.
I'm not trash.
No, of course not.
No, I couldn't have buried ourselves.
You know that you're going to deal with someone in crisis. You know that someone's going to need your help.
San Antonio Police, are you okay?
Police have a misconception of mental health.
I want the old Chris. Those voices just have total control of him. You don't trust anybody.
Mental illness is not unique to the United States of America. What is unique is this dynamic of unarmed citizens being killed by the people who are supposed to protect and serve us.
Like, is that the first thing that they think of, to pull their weapon and shoot somebody? No one with mental illness deserves to die because they're already dying inside, suffering.
We have to change the way culturally that we look at how we succeed in police work. I have an opportunity every single time I'm called to change somebody's perspective.
There was an incident that happened in Memphis, Tennessee, with a young man who was fatally shot during an encounter with police, and he had mental illness. And the department in Memphis realized that there needs to be a program to deal with these type of folks, how to interact with somebody with a mental illness, how to talk to somebody with a mental illness. It prompted police departments across the nation to start to deal with those folks in our community. There are a lot of folks that are locked up in prison. They have underlying mental health issue. Our goal is to try to keep these folks out of jail. What's going on with Christopher? What triggered him? What's he been diagnosed with? Bipolar? Okay. We got some updates saying that he was asking somebody to shoot him? Okay. Who is he telling that to?
Anybody that wants to do it.
I wasn't allowed to try this again, so it came out of it.
Well, here's the thing, Christopher. We got a lot of people here because they're concerned about the things you said. That's why we're out here.
The truth is, when I got people looking at me and asking how I was trained, that doesn't help the situation.
Did you hit walls and get upset? Hit objects? Right there? You did that today?
If a police officer feels that you're an imminent threat to yourself, we can detain you to see a doctor. That's essentially what an emergency detention is.
I'm going to be honest with you, man. I'm a straight shooter with you. Maybe you need to go back to the hospital tonight.
Oh, I don't, sir. I don't. I'll be my word. I'm honest. I don't need it. Trust me, the doctors never help me.
It's not an arrest. Even though we put handcuffs on you, we have to, it doesn't go on arrest record. The police report is protected by HIPAA, so you have privacy rights.
I feel great. I feel better now. Please, don't put this on me.
Christopher, you made the rest of shoot yourself.
Come on, man. Please, don't do this. Don't do this. Come on, man.
Okay, I'm going to go get some shoes for you, okay? I'll be back.
the choice of you deciding if we're gonna go or not go, that's been removed. You're gonna go. How we leave here is up to you. Where we go is up to you. If you have a facility you'd like to go to, tell me.
No psych wards, no X, no low ridge. Public hospital.
I can't, we're gonna make a phone call and see where we can get you. If you wanna fight and call more people, and we have to carry you out and break half your stuff in the house, then let's do it. I don't wanna do that, and you know you don't wanna do that.
Oh, no, but you're wrong.
You didn't do anything wrong. It's just, we just don't want the wrong response to come out here and then put your holes and stuff.
We're just gonna close the door nice and slow, okay? Yes, sir. I think that ended up doing really well.
Yeah, that did work.
Yeah, he went from 100 to 0, not 0 to 100.
Okay, sir, let's go and walk through this single door over here, and then we'll get you right to the ER, okay? Perfect.
See, told you, we'll get you to an ER.
I get frustrated with the system and the fact that there's just not enough resources for mental health. And it's frustrating because it's become a police matter. Because it has become a police matter, we're expected to fix the situation. The reality is, we can't fix every situation.
From 1955 to 1977, the number of people in state hospitals suffering from mental illness dropped from 75% to 7%. What happened to all those people? Where did they go? I mean, they just didn't disappear. When they were released from the hospitals, they were released to the community. Problem was there was no groundwork for it. There was no local mental health authority. We moved them from the state hospitals to the penal system, which now became the largest provider of mental health services in the country. Basically, what happened with deinstitutionalization was the people that were in the hospital were released into the society and told to fend for yourself.
I hate when they put messages and little writings and sayings and crap like on my head just because they want to play around and make fun of me. They put sensors in me and stuff to make me shake and wobble, like if I'm wired or something. I don't know.
Here we go. The police have come here several times and they know Christopher on a first name basis, and they also know me on a first name basis because of the amount of times that they've gone over to the home.
She's the one making my life worse. I'm miserable. Her and my grandma. They're the worst people with.
So I think this video is incredibly telling and honest about where we are in our society in the United States with mental health, and also how law enforcement has been put into full responsibility about responding to mental health crisis situations within that. And so within that, I'm going to, if you have questions, let's, I want to review that, but I want to get through some information about CIT. And so I'm going to, any follow-up questions, please let me know about the video. Next thing I'd like to do is show a PowerPoint, and hopefully I can do this. Okay, from the beginning, boom. Okay, am I up, Gail? Okay, yes?
Good to go. Yep,
Okay,
we're
good.
good.
Thank you. Okay, so why CIT, and again, how successful is CIT? So what you're seeing here is a chart from that demonstrates or shows the issue about mental health and also with law enforcement. The blue line represents the total number of mental health beds that were in the United States. In the late 1950s, 1960s, there were over 500,000, almost 600,000 mental health hospital beds in the United States. And there was a lot of misuse, abuse, negligence, torture, even murder that was happening in a lot of these mental health hospital facilities. There was lack of patients' rights and other issues. Within that, the federal government said, we have to do something, we need to do, and they did one of two things right. What they did was they started closing down the mental health hospital beds, but within that, they forgot to do the second part, which was to put the money back into the community for support services, for affordable housing, for medications, for peer support specialists, for navigators, for counseling, and all the different types of wraparound services that somebody might need. And within that, as these hospital beds were decreasing, the red line is our jail and prison rates. And the United States is the most incarcerated country in the world per capita. Now our jails, as you heard in the video, are our #1 mental health wards. And I'll give you more information about that soon. So within that, that is what's happened. And in Virginia, you know, if we talk about some of the major hospitals, take a look at Western State Hospital over in Stanton, Virginia. Back in the 1950s, early 1960s, it had over 2,000 hospital beds. It was basically a city within itself. Today, even though the population has more than doubled since the 1950s, it has less than 250 beds. So within that, even more so is the issue about what's happening in our own backyard around the greater Charlottesville area. And for folks that have been here for a number of years, you probably remember some of these facilities: Charter Hospital, Culpeper, Charter Westbrook, Rucker 3 that was located in the old Martha Jefferson Hospital bed. And that was primarily for geriatrics. One of the biggest concerns right now is twofold. There's only one state mental health hospital for our pediatric, for our juveniles, and there's only one state mental health hospital for the geriatrics, for our elderly. Where we're seeing is an increase in the total number of mental health calls and commitment orders. And one of the, where we're seeing most of the calls is in those two areas. With our juvenile cases, probably half of the mental health crisis calls are with our juveniles, and the other half, or another large percentages, is with our elderly. And unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of the nursing homes that are using the commitment orders, what's called an emergency custody order, an ECO, as a way to deal with some of their patients within that. So I've been working very closely with the Jefferson Board on Aging and the ombudsman there to make sure that that type of abuse doesn't continue. But again, we're seeing an incredible loss in the mental health beds. Now, this is not just the main issue. It's not just having a loss of mental health beds, it's also a loss of mental health services and funding that's going on in Virginia and in our greater area. So our jail, ACRJ, Albemarle Charlottesville Regional Jail, you would never go by here and see this sign on there. It is open 24/7, 7 days a week, and there's always room at the end, as I call it. If they have one bunk bed and the jail gets full, they'll put 2 bunk beds in, and then they keep on increasing it. So one of our concerns here is that the jail has been basically the dumping ground, the warehouse with folks that have been suffering with the mental health and that are in crisis. Here's some information and stats about the 2 jails that I work for, the Albemarle Charlottesville Regional Jail and the Central Virginia Regional Jail, which is located in Orange. These are the rated capacities documented by the state, by the Department of Corrections. And these are the current counts. They're both working way over their rated capacity. Looking more information about these 2 jails, working with their medical departments, we know that the people or the inmates that are suffering from a serious mental illness, and my definition of a serious mental illness is that they're receiving psychotropic meds. So that's 1 in 5 inmates that are dealing with a serious mental illness. And this is we've really criminalized this disability, this disease, this issue of our society about dealing with mental health and mental illness. Within that, the need for CIT, working with our probation officers, we know on any given day there are 400 to 500 offenders with dealing with a mental illness. In our jails, over 3,000 people. Inmates have a high recidivist rates, and that means somebody committing another incident, another criminal act, and that's above 70%. So there are people that have literally been put through the system, through the ringer, multiple times. Okay. One of the major needs for CIT, just from the criminal justice system, is that an offender with a mental illness and an offender without a mental illness, who have both been incarcerated for the exact same crime, the person with a mental illness is going to be incarcerated 4 to 5 times longer for the exact same crime that an offender without the mental illness. And why is that? Because, to be honest with you, the criminal justice system doesn't know what to do. The prosecutor, the defense, the judge, they say, send that person back for more evaluation. And then that person de-escalates even that much more. And then that person has an incident, and then there's more charges, and becomes this vicious cycle with that person staying within the criminal justice system. I believe that we have the world's greatest military, and our country is just slowly starting to end the longest war that has ever occurred in our US history. 2.5 million of our finest have served over there. I have 4 kids. 2 of my kids serve in the military, 1 in the Navy, 1 in the Army. Where I think our military and our country has failed is taking care of our military when they come back. Of all the suicides, 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5 suicides is a veteran. And why is that so critically important to know is that in Virginia, over 10% of the residents in Virginia are veterans. We have some of the largest military bases in the world. And so we need to be aware of how we can get the help and support for our military. When we talk about PTSD, a lot of people think about just the military, but yeah, when we're training officers that are going through the CIT training, again, PTSD can be of all types of incidences, being in an accident or being in a horrific situation, somebody that's been mentally, physically, or sexually abused. But we're trying to do more and more training about what's called trauma-informed care training, and getting people the awareness about PTSD and about trauma, and getting them the help that they need. Region 10, the Community Services Board that covers all these different jurisdictions. The green line represents the total number of mental health evaluations. And over time, and I apologize, I seriously need to update this chart here, but those evaluations have more than quadrupled over the last 10 years. So we're seeing a greater number, and we're also seeing a greater acuity of cases. And the way I define acuity is that we're seeing more and more patients being what's called TDO, temporary detaining order, where they have to be transported to a medical health facility. Okay, so what is CIT? It's what we're trying to do ultimately is keeping people out of the criminal justice system, but even more so trying to get people connected with the systems of care within our community. And it's about a responsibility for everybody. So during our trainings and the work that I do, I'm very involved with different members within the community. I see Anna Mendez is here. So working with her staff and trying to get people that need to get connected to different services has been a tremendous blessing and support. So thank you, Anna, and to your staff and your team. And it's really just, it's more than just training. It really is about a mindset. And I want to talk about more about the issue of mindset at the end of this presentation. What we're trying to do is work with law enforcement and first responders before somebody gets arrested, before they have to go through the criminal justice system. Within that, so in this intercept, we have trained 100% of all our emergency dispatchers at all the different jurisdictions that I work with. So 100% of the dispatchers in the 9 jurisdictions have been trained, and continue on doing advanced training and further training each year to make sure that we stay at that 100% factor. The vision of CIT has to be this, and this is a common denominator for everybody. It doesn't matter where you are, whether you're working with veterans or homeless services. It should be about safety for everybody, and the safety for the community, and for the safety of the person in crisis. And we want to make sure that that is kept in front of us. But the question is, how do we implement that so it's a win situation for everybody? Okay. I'm not going to read this to you, and you can read this, but one of the biggest things that I tell people what's not in here is that we're not trying to train first responders and law enforcement to be social workers. We're trying to teach them about the signs and symptoms of behaviors of helping somebody that is in crisis, and then getting them effectively and hopefully safely to the appropriate support and resources to get them to the help that they desperately need. So how do we know if CIT is working? One of the parts is that we've, over time, we've looked at officer injuries, and that has been reduced since we've implemented CIT. We reduced the time that officers spend on related calls. Well, that was true until just recently, not because of COVID, but within the last 2 weeks. The commissioner of mental health, the commissioner of DBUDS, Department of Behavioral Health and Mental Health Services, closed the admissions or any new admissions of 5 of the 8 state mental health hospitals. So now people are literally being brought to the hospital and literally what's called, I think, being held, being as warehoused at the emergency room without people getting to the services and the help that they need. We've trying, most sheriffs and police chiefs are very supportive of the CIT, and they want 100% of their officers trained within CIT. Big thing is that we're trying, yes, to keep people out of the criminal justice system, but within that, just because somebody commits a crime also doesn't give somebody what I would call a hall pass. If the crime is of such a nature, especially of a felony level, the officers have to follow the law, and somebody is going to be held accountable. Luckily, we're working, and Anna gives a lot of kudos for this, is we have a therapeutic docket, a mental health docket, to try to get people the help and the services that they need so that they're accountable for their behavior, but more so they're getting the help so they can get back and reconnected with community, and also that they can get the support that they have and need with their mental illness. This is a logic model that was put together by UVA School of Systems Engineering, and they've been a phenomenal help within that. I put this together as a better way of representing what first responders and law enforcement do. It doesn't matter in Charlottesville or in Albemarle County, Blacksburg, or Kalamazoo. A first responder only has 4 options to deal with a mental health crisis situation: to resolve it at location, voluntarily take them somewhere, could be to the hospital, could be back home, it doesn't matter. Involuntary, that's when somebody's suicidal or homicidal, inability to care for themselves, or jail. So before CIT, to be honest with you, the jail was the easy drop off. They could be in and out within 15 minutes. What I'm trying to do with CIT is to level the playing field for the officers so that they can make the right decision, so that they have options within that. So what we've known from the 911 calls is that over time, most of the law enforcement officers within the city and the county and UVA have been resolving their mental health crisis calls on location. And the other ones have been voluntarily providing referral or dealing with the ECO process. And over time, the arrest rates, especially with the misdemeanor cases, has decreased. So it's been a win-win situation for everybody. One of the most important things that we have done in CIT is that we have a monthly review team. So I have members from all these different agencies, and there's multiple of them. We meet on a monthly basis, and we talk about cases that we're concerned about, whether somebody is just coming into the criminal justice system or somebody that we've seen ongoing on a monthly basis or even weekly basis or daily basis, and trying to get them connected to services. So again, as I said, we're all working with the same people, but just from different perspectives. So again, having a community approach instead of just a criminal approach or just from a mental health approach, we're having a tremendous success in getting people connected to services and supports. This is critically important. CIT doesn't work for everything, and it's not appropriate for everything. If there's an issue with an active shooter like Virginia Tech or Columbine or Sandy Hook, and when your personal safety or your community safety is in danger, this is not a time for CIT. And everybody, no matter what agency you work for, mental health or law enforcement or community agencies, everybody should be following their protocols about safety, because there's a time for working with somebody and trying to help de-escalate, and there are other times where you need to take care of your personal safety first or other people's safeties first. Okay. Ultimately, we're trying to develop a 24/7 non-refusal crisis diversion site. We have two places right now, and that's the jail, ACRJ, Marshallsville Community Jail, or UVA Hospital. But ultimately, we're trying to develop a facility that is just for people that are in crisis, whether they're walking in by themselves or they've been driven by a family member or been by a law enforcement officer, to get them the help there in a safer, more dignified, respecting, safer facility, and then and go from there. So that's one of our biggest aspects that we're looking for, is the funding and implementation of a real crisis assessment center. Okay, so that was really quick and dirty about CIT, and I have about I see about a little bit more than 10 minutes left. One of the things that is absolutely critical to me is the understanding about stigma. And to me, stigma is just another fancy word for mental illness. What I'd like to do is an exercise to understand about this issue. So behind me, you see a whiteboard, and I'm going to ask you to participate, and everybody to give an answer, and just shout it out if you would, or type it in the chat box, and Gail will tell me what is written. But within that, the word is mental illness. Okay. Give me one or two words that describe somebody with a mental illness. And before you begin, I want you to be really honest, not politically correct. I'm not saying that you would use these words, but what are the words that you hear all the time in the media, on TV, in magazines, in the locker room, that honestly describes somebody with a mental illness? What are those words that you hear? Gail, can you shout them out?
Sure. Well, I'll start. Crazy.
Crazy, yeah.
We have sick.
Sick.
We have troubled.
Yeah.
We have crazy nuts.
Crazy nuts, yeah.
And we have disturbed.
Disturbed, yeah.
Crazy nuts was supposed to be two separate words, but
Yeah,
that's
that's okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Others, and this is being nice. This is being incredibly generous within that. Loony, nutso, insane. Thank you. Yes. Okay. Okay. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. And I appreciate your honesty and candor about that, okay? Now, one more time, let's change it. The word is cancer, okay? I can't see everybody, but I bet everybody would raise their hand and say, I know somebody that's dealt with cancer, died from cancer, dealing with cancer, in recovery with cancer, remission of cancer, is on their deathbed with cancer. We all know somebody, okay? Honestly, same thing. What are one or two words that honestly describe somebody or anybody that's dealing or has had cancer? What are those words that are out there in our community? Please tell me. Can you read them out, Gail?
Victim,
Yeah. Why me? Yeah. What else? Everybody. Hands on the keyboard. Put something in the chat box. Or shout it out.
Sick.
Yeah. Sick. Yeah.
Brave.
What's that? Brave? Yeah. You gotta be brave. Mentally, physically, spiritually. Yeah, you gotta be brave. What else? How would you describe somebody? Strong. Yeah, you got to be.
I have dying here too.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else?
I'm going to add innocent
Yeah.
and survivor.
Survivor. Yeah. Yep. Got it. Thank you. So here's the rub. Taking a look at the word mental illness and cancer. They're both medical diseases, okay? Mental illness is a brain disease, okay? Nobody wanted or asked for mental illness. Nobody wanted or asked for cancer. I'm not questioning for a microsecond that the cognitive behavior is different between mental illness and cancer. I get that. These words that you told me for mental illness, and you guys were pretty nice about it too. Crazy, sick, troubled, nuts, disturbed, insane. All those words are disgusting, repulsive, of utmost disregard and disrespect. And they're being used today all the time, okay? The words for cancer, those are hard too, but they're of empathy and understanding. Victim, sick, brave, strong, survivor, innocent, dying, okay? Would you ever use the words that you gave me for mental illness to describe somebody for cancer? No, not even close, never, ever. Now reverse it. Do you have any problems using the words that you gave for cancer for describing somebody with a mental illness? People with mental illnesses are brave. They are strong. They're surviving one day at a time. They're innocent. They didn't ask for this. Okay. How we use words. Our words, our behaviors follow our words. Our behaviors follow our words. I can't honestly say to somebody, hey, nut job, hey, wacko, hey, insane, with any type of respect or dignity. It doesn't work. So being aware of this, okay? So going back in time, in the early 1960s, when my grandmother was dying of cancer, my parents said to me, she has the C word, okay? And if you remember, the older folks here, that was what was talked about. And people didn't talk about cancer, okay? And Cancer Society has done a phenomenal job about bringing awareness and education and money and marketing and in that. And just look here in Charlottesville, we have the Emily Kirk Center. We have the Women's 4-Mile Run. We have UVA football players that are wearing pink helmets and pink cleats to bring awareness about cancer. And that's fantastic, okay? But what do we have locally that is also talking about mental health and mental illness? We don't. Okay, and so cancer has become part of our vocabulary. It's a dining room conversation now. Okay, if you said to somebody that you had cancer, I call it the casserole effect. You're going to have 5 casseroles in the freezer and 3 more waiting for you at the doorstep by the end of the week. And you're going to get emails and text messages from your high school friends that you haven't heard from in 20, 30 years. But with mental illness, if you said to your boss or your supervisor, hey, I can't sleep. I'm sleeping all the time. I have these thoughts, these feelings. Do you think you're going to have job security? Do you think you're going to be trusted? Do you think you're going to have any type of promotion? That's the stigma, and that's what we're dealing with in our society. And it's probably one of the greatest issues in our society that we have not even touched or tackled with. So again, I want to make sure this is what I call the 800-pound gorilla in the room. So again, when we talk about mental illness, you know, we say, oh, it's the mentally ill, or it's a mentally ill person. No, it's a person first. It's a person with a mental illness. With cancer, we don't say, oh, it's a cancer person. No, it's a person with cancer. So we need to have that education and that awareness campaign in our society. One of the great examples here is that about cancer is that we in Allied Concrete, they have a pink painted cement mixer, which is fantastic. So my job, and I've been trying to get meetings with them, is to have a purple painted cement mixer with the issues about mental health is health, and in getting people connected to services. So that's one of my pet projects, is bringing about awareness about mental health to our community. So I'm in the middle of that process. Okay, time is almost up. I want to show a quick thing about, let's see if I can do this.
While you're doing that, Tom, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I wanted to know, since there's so much here, I want us to know before you start or make a proposal on how we finish, if there's a burning question that somebody would like an answer to, why don't you take it? And then why don't, we talked about this before, anyone who can stay, I know that many people have a hard stop. This is your lunch hour. But I'd like to get a question answered if somebody has a burning question, and then we'll go into the 1 o'clock hour a little bit. And then I encourage anyone who wants more information. I'm gail.milligan@sevillepolicefoundation.org, and contact me, and I'll be in touch with Tom to see if there's another session we want to do or something like that. So how does that sound as a proposal?
The video I have at the end is only 3 minutes long, and
Oh, okay, fine. All
it's just a quick thing about showing really how we need as a community to change our mental health crisis system. And this is a great example. So if I may, I'm just going to show this for, and it's only 3 minutes and 27 seconds.
Perfect. Thank you.
Now rewind. It's been a bad day. It's been a bad day. You've been in a bad car accident or experiencing chest pain. Fortunately, there is an emergency medical system built to respond immediately to your crisis. Now rewind. It's been a bad day, but this time it's due to a mental health crisis, like thoughts of suicide. The same emergency medical system that responds to chest pain also responds to this type of crisis and is less than ideal to handle it. Yet it is this system that responds to thousands of people in a mental health crisis every day. In general, everyone in a mental health crisis gets routed through an emergency department. There, a person in crisis often waits between 18 hours and 3 days for connection to mental health care. This approach is difficult for patients and wastes a lot of resources. But the Crisis Now model outlines a tested and proven alternative, a way to improve crisis systems across the country by expanding the options for those of us in a crisis, while reducing overall healthcare costs by creating a true emergency crisis service. And there are big savings in the justice system too, while dramatically improving the experience of the person and their family members. Drawn from current national best practices in crisis response, Crisis Now focuses on 3 components that help ensure an appropriate level of care to anyone in crisis. Component 1, a crisis call center staffed by specialists that coordinate all levels of crisis care. They evaluate the current crisis and can support and stabilize up to 90% of the cases they get. Those that need more, get more. with these hubs dispatching appropriate resources and then supporting those resources and finding the best solution. Component 2, 24/7 mobile crisis teams that work in the streets, meeting people where they are, and for the majority, resolving their crisis right then. Dispatched by the call center hub, they lessen the burden on local police and reduce the stigma that some feel when a uniformed officer knocks on their door. Component 3, crisis stabilization locations, which constitute the retreat model, can offer short-term care for people who need support and observation, regardless of their level of crisis. These programs operate 24/7 and are the right door to everyone in a mental health crisis, including those that may require involuntary treatment. These high-tech, high-touch facilities divert away from the emergency departments and jails while providing immediate specialized treatment. Police no longer need to decide between EDs or jail. The no wrong door approach reduces the time needed to handle these cases from hours to minutes and allows police to go back to supporting public safety, a role they're uniquely trained to do. Let's review the impact of the Crisis Now model in Maricopa County, Arizona, fourth most populous county in the US. In 2017, Maricopa County Police connected more than 23,000 people in a behavioral health crisis directly to crisis care, and those people were accepted 100% of the time. The Crisis Now initiatives saved the time equivalent of 37 full-time officers, reducing wait times in emergency departments for behavioral health patients by a total of 45 years, saving local hospitals and emergency departments a total of $37 million in avoided costs and losses, freeing them up to help the patients they're designed to treat, while routing behavioral health patients to a course of care that's best suited to their needs, and reducing Maricopa County's overall healthcare costs by an estimated $260 million, more than twice the cost of Crisis Now services. To learn more about how Crisis Now can make a difference in your community, go to crisisnow.com.
Thank you. So, Gail, or to anybody, if there's questions, and respecting time, it's 12:52. So I understand that some people have to leave in less than 8 minutes.
I have a question. Any progress on getting an 811? I think that the attendee's asking, she's saying the equivalent 911 call
Sure.
equivalent.
Right. So federal legislation passed for a 988 number. And Virginia is looking at trying to implement that. There's with different mental health crisis centers or call places. One of the big factors, though, in that is making sure that the right calls get there. And the other part is even harder is the staffing issues. So right now, with not just law enforcement, but with mental health and with teachers, and especially with dispatchers of all types, staffing has become a critical issue. So yes, I'm very supportive of having a mental health crisis line, but it better be funded and supported at the right amount, and that they're not putting what I call chump change to this service, because it's incredibly hard work for these dispatchers or service providers at the 988 centers. Georgia has probably the most nationally renowned one, and I've worked directly with them, and they're having issues about trying to make sure it's properly staffed and funded. But yes, we're moving in that direction. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. I have a question. Well, I have a lot of questions, but I think the burning one is what's being done on the federal level in addition and the local level to address all these empty beds?
There's a number of factors here. And it's been, to be honest with you, it's been the perfect storm in a horrible way. So you had COVID, which has affected a lot of these hospitals, and then the staffing are just have also gotten COVID, and they're exhausted and they're burned out. So at the pediatric hospital, the Commonwealth Center, they have something like 48 or 58 beds for the entire state, just dealing with pediatric cases, and they can only have enough staff for something like 22 beds. And now there's the commissioner closed everything down because things are getting worse. whereas 2 weeks ago, there were over 100 resignations from staff members from the different state hospitals. So the state is going to throw a lot of money at this. But within that, my question is going to, one, take a lot of time to hire new staff if they can find it. And two, again, I hope that they are going to increase the salary ranges for this and more support services, not just staffing, but services for people that are at the hospital. And the other part is that, to me, it's not just having more long-term hospital beds. It's what I'm really looking for is on the continuum of need when it comes to services. So from 23-hour beds for pediatric, for geriatric, for forensic, long-term, voluntary cases. The real issue is that like any program, any issue, it's a business. UVA Hospital is a business. If they were making money in mental health, they would build more beds. So the lack of funding or the lack of appropriate funding is criminal within itself. So that's one of the major factors here, is taking a look at trying to do the services. The other part is doing the services right, where I think a lot more services need to be dealt with, what I call before somebody calls 911. Our system in America is built on crisis. Until somebody de-escalates so badly, so poorly that they have dropped, and or in such pain, they have to call the 911 services to get any type of help. And if we can be more proactive and provide services and greater care and accessibility of the right services before somebody has to go into crisis, it only makes sense, and it would be the right thing to do. But that is also not just a change in money, but also in a change of policies and culture.
Thank you. Can you clarify something quickly? There's another question. If someone is having a crisis with a mentally ill family member, they do not call you. Their path is to call 911, correct? The public does not call CIT?
People, I primarily work with the law enforcement agencies and the first responders. And so if there's a crisis, and to me, a crisis is a crisis is a crisis. But when somebody calls 911, people have asked for a CIT officer.
Okay.
And
All right.
a lot of people in the community have reached out and have specifically asked for a CIT officer to respond. I find overall the officers and the first responders are doing a great job. The real issue, and here we're at this logjam, is then what? So the two options right now are jail or the ED. And again, if they go even to the emergency department, they're stuck there. And by law, the officer, by Virginia law, has to stay with that person. And if they get what's called a temporary detaining order, that person could be literally housed at the jail, and it's an issue right now, especially with our juveniles, for 4, 5, 6 days. Talk about the trauma for that patient and the exhaustion of resources from our community sources that are having to be there with that person because of the state of the law saying that we have to hold that person in custody. So, again, we need to change funding, policy, and culture and resources and how we respond to crisis calls and situations.
Very complicated subject. I mean, it certainly cannot be covered satisfactorily in an hour, but you've done an amazing job, Tom. Thank you so much for spending the time and helping us all understand it a little bit better. There is no Lunch and Learn in August. The next Lunch and Learn is Wednesday, September 15th. The topic is internal affairs. ever a hot topic in law enforcement. We hope to see you there. And in the meantime, enjoy the rest of your summer. Thank you so much. Take care.
You know, if I'm going to put a one plug out, I sent you an email about a training that's coming up next Tuesday. And Kevin Hines, who is a gentleman who jumped and survived from the Golden Gate Bridge, and he's presenting via Zoom, and it's a free event next Tuesday at 1 o'clock. And if you could forward that out to everybody,
Yes.
that would be tremendous. Thank you.
Tom, thanks again. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thomas,